Video. Today we talk about history, social science, standard 7, Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate as a part of social science for standard 7 history. Now we have studied history is studied in three portions about India: the ancient India, the medieval period, and the modern period. Modern period is a period after the Europeans, the British came and started establishing East India Company or the colonial rule. While medieval period is a period between 700 and 1750 maybe, and ancient period is a period before that. In medieval period, there were so many small kingdoms in the north and south of India, and India was not what you knew today. The word Hindustan did not mean India. The word India itself was not there. The word Bharat itself was not popularly used from a political or an administrative setup. This all started, or we can say reasonably, there was a rule all over India only during the Delhi Sultanate period. They tried to bring the whole of India under their control. Were they 100% successful? Not necessarily. But we can reasonably say a sultanate or an empire spanning the most part of India were possible, or it was there only during the Delhi Sultanate period. Before and after that, we had small kings ruling here and there. Okay, the Turks wrested the political control of the Gangetic Plain in 11th century. So we are studying about the Indian history period 700 to 1750. So Turks wrested the political control of the Gangetic Plain in 11th century. 11th century only, the Turkish invaders were able to have control of the Gangetic Plain. Why they were able to do? Not just their audacity and ferocity. The Muslim fighters were very strong, not just because of that, not their military might, but the Indian rulers did not have unity. They did not have the capability to defend. They had distrust among themselves. They had a rivalry among the clans. They did not have the quality of the army as much as that of the invaders. So this resulted in founding and consolidating of the Islamic rule in India. So the Islamic rule in India got established after the 11th century only because the Indians were not having unity, they were not able to defend themselves. The clan rivalry and distrust made it easy for the superior military might of Muslim soldiers to win, in addition to their audacity and ferocity of the Turkish invaders to get the political control of the Gangetic Plain in the 11th century. This laid the foundation stone, right? First was the slave dynasty. Why we call it as a slave dynasty? Because the slaves were the ones who were entrusted to rule. Muhammad Ghori in 12th century AD had no sons, and so he nurtured special slaves called bandagan. Bandagan is slave, a Persian term used for slaves purchased for military service for posting as governors of provinces. So whenever Muhammad Ghori did win a particular area, because he did not have a son to appoint as a governor of that province or of that kingdom, he will appoint one of his slaves. These slaves were carefully chosen and carefully trained to be the governors. The people, the kings like Muhammad Ghori used to believe one slave is better than 100 sons because they are more reliable, more trustworthy, more loyal, and they don't have their own preferences other than that of the masters. So they appointed slaves for the service. After Ghori's death in 1206, one of his slaves, Qutbuddin Aibak, who was governing Turkish territory in India, declared himself as Sultan. It means what? In the 11th century, the Turks wrested control of the Gangetic Plain. And then Ghori went back, appointing Qutbuddin Aibak as the governor during that period. Now in 1206, Muhammad Ghori died. After Muhammad Ghori died, Qutbuddin Aibak was no more a slave of Ghori, he thought, and he declared himself the ruler of India. That means the Sultan of India. Sultan is the equivalent of the king in the Islamic world. So Sultan is the king. So he declared himself the king or the emperor of India. For which area? Not the whole of India, but the Turkish territories in India. What are the Turkish territories? The Indo-Gangetic Plain, the kingdoms of the Indo-Gangetic Plain, over which the Turks were able to overrule in the 11th century. So Muhammad Ghori, one of the Bandagans or the slaves, Qutbuddin Aibak, was ruling on behalf of the Ghori on the Indian province. Indian province it is called because it was a part of the Turkish Empire where Ghori was ruling from the Turkey. Now Mamluk is an Arabic word meaning slave. So this dynasty is also called Mamluk dynasty or a slave dynasty. They ruled for about 84 years. That means what? 1206 to 1290, for 84 years the slave dynasty ruled. Till 1206, 1200 to 1206 it is called Qutbuddin Aibak as a slave of Gauri was running the affairs of the Turkish territories in India. 1200 is what when they brought the Qutbuddin Aibak to rule. Right? After Qutbuddin Aibak, Shamsuddin Iltutmish, Ghiyasuddin Balban were the important rulers. Shamsuddin Iltutmish, Ghiyasuddin Balban. There was one famous lady also, she was called Rasia Sultana. Why it is Sultana? Sultana is female form of Sultan. Rasia Sultana. What am I writing? Rasia Sultana. Rasia Sultana was very famous for lots of reasons. Okay, we will study all that in subsequent chapters. So, slave dynasty started in 1206. It started because Qutbuddin Aibak, one of the slaves of Muhammad Ghori, declared himself as a sultan after the death of Ghori in 1206, and the slave dynasty lasted for 84 years. Shamsuddin Iltutmish, Ghiyasuddin Balban are the other important kings of the dynasty, and Rasia Sultana was the lady ruler. Okay, Qutbuddin Aibak, he ruled for only some 4 years. Started with Lahore as a capital in the Indo-Gangetic plain, and then he shifted to Delhi. He actively and personally led the military campaigns to central and western Indo-Gangetic plain. The central India and western India, he was leading the military campaign. He was acquiring new territories and suppressing rebellions. He was very active. He was not just a governor of the province as he was under Muhammad Ghori, but he was actively leading the campaign, suppressing the rebellion and getting new territories under his control. So he was expanding the Turkish kingdom of India or Turkish province of India into a Indian slave dynasty kingdom, Delhi Sultanate. Why it is called Sultanate? Ruled by Sultan, Sultanate. It was centered in Delhi, so it was Delhi Sultanate. Now later, Bakitsar Khalji, his trusted lieutenant, looked at conquest of the eastern Gangetic plain, Bihar, Bengal and all. So on the central and west, Qutbuddin Aibak personally led the military campaign. On the east, it was the responsibility was on the trusted lieutenant, this military commander, Bakitsar Khalji. What is other thing special about Aibak? Aibak built the Quwatul Islam Masjid. This is the oldest masjid in India, oldest masjid in Delhi, Quwatul Islam. Quwatul Islam Masjid in Delhi is the oldest in India, built by Qutbuddin Aibak. When Muhammad Ghori came, Muslim rule was established in India. Islamic rule was established with Delhi or Lahore as the center. But it was Qutbuddin Aibak who built this masjid, Quwatul Islam Masjid. He laid the foundations for Qutub Minar, but he could not complete it. He died on the way, and then it was his successors who completed the Qutub Minar. He died of injuries during an accidental fall from horse while playing polo in 2010. That means what? After becoming a sultan, he had enough time not only to lead the campaigns but to play polo. Polo is a hockey on the horse. He fell accidentally and he died. Though he was a warrior, he was strong and fit and he did not die in the war. He died from a small accident, and that too while having a game of polo in 2010. So 4 years he was ruling. Now you know Bakitsar Khalji was there. So after Bakitsar Khalji was the lieutenant and the able military commander. After Qutbuddin Aibak died, Qutbuddin Aibak's son Aram Shah proved incompetent. So nobles preferred Iltutmish, the son-in-law of Aibak. So Iltutmish was appointed, not Aram Shah, the son of the slave, son of Qutbuddin Aibak, but his son-in-law Iltutmish was appointed because the nobles felt Aibak is a better sultan. Now what this did, Iltutmish did a lot of things. Aibak's son-in-law. What he did, he averted the danger of the threat of Mongols under Genghis Khan. The leader of Mongols were Genghis Khan. They were expanding in Central Asia, and the threat of the Mongol invasion was averted. How? First, he refused to shelter to Qarim Shah Jalaluddin. Qarim Shah Jalaluddin was what? Qarim Shah Jalaluddin was driven out by Genghis Khan and this guy deserted the Mongolian kingdom and came to India. When he came here, Iltutmish did not give him protection. So had he given protection, Genghis Khan would have been angry and he would have invaded India. By not giving protection, Genghis Khan was not angry with Iltutmish, and so that was one way of he averted the danger of Mongol invasion. Also, he organized the Turkish nobility into a select group of 40 nobles, the 40. So, he created a council of 40 persons. So, this was the first time in the Indian Islamic rule that a council was formed. They were also called Chahlagni. The 40 group of 40 nobles, Iltutmish organized the Turkish nobility, and they were given certain powers and they were having advisory roles. And these Turkish nobility were also responsible to ensure there is no threat of the Mongol invasion. To this nobility, he gave what? He gave iktas. Ikta means what? Land. The land was given. And what was given? Not only the land was given, the right to collect revenue was also given. And then this revenue is what? These 40 or these generals, the people who got the iktas were members of his army. They had the right over the land. They will collect the revenue and they will maintain an army. They will maintain an army. The iktadar or the mukti, the person who got the ikta, mostly the Turkish nobles or the military commanders, these mukti or iktadar had responsibility for what? To provide the sultan with military assistance, to fight the Mongols if necessary, to provide the sultan with military assistance to fight the wars. That is one responsibility. And then to do that responsibility, they have to maintain the troops. They have to maintain horses and army, people, soldiers. They have to maintain army and troops. And to meet these expenses, he will get the revenue from the land. And they will also share a small portion of the revenue with the sultan. So these were the responsibilities of the iktadar or the mukti. Iktadar or the mukti are the one who got the ikta or the land, and they were the nobles or the knights or the military commanders of the Iltutmish army. Iltutmish is a son-in-law of Aibak. Now, he also completed the Qutub Minar started by Qutbuddin Aibak. He died in 1236 after ruling for 26 years because he was an able sultan and because he would avoid the dangers and other wars. People were reasonably comfortable. He also placated the nobles by appointing a select 40 of them as advisory council. So, he was able to rule for 26 years. After Iltutmish, Razia Sultana came up. As the most capable son of Iltutmish, Rakuddin Firuz was dead. Iltutmish nominated his daughter Razia Sultana as the daughter. While ruling for 26 years, his son Firuz was dead, and so daughter Razia Sultana was nominated as successor to Iltutmish. Razia Sultana was proud to call herself daughter of Iltutmish. She even minted coins and circulated, saying issued by the daughter of Iltutmish. Now, so many nobles were not favored by Razia. She was also entrusting other new slaves new responsibilities. She started trusting an Ethiopian slave, Jalaluddin Yaqut, who was her personal attendant. Now, because Razia was putting more trust on her own Ethiopian slave, Jalaluddin Yaqut, and not on the 40 formed by Iltutmish, because the nobles felt a rule by a lady is not suitable enough, because the nobles did not want to take orders or work under the leadership of a lady as a sultana for the for the Delhi Sultanate, the slave dynasty rule, the nobles, especially Minaji Siraj and others, plotted because they preferred a male ruler and they revolted and got her murdered in 1240. So Razia was able to rule only 4 years. Qutbuddin Aibak also ruled only 4 years and Razia was ruling for 4 years only, Razia Sultana. She was an able ruler. She was very capable. But because of the prejudices people had against the women in those days, in those communities, they were not able to have a female ruler. If you notice, during the same period, during the 1200 to 1300 period, there were so many other ladies who were also trying to become the princesses who were nominated to rule because there was no suitable prince to succeed the king. But they had to face a lot of trouble to be the rulers because the society was not willing to accept a lady as a ruler. Right? There were times when the princess had to put up a male's clothes and act as a male in front of the public, though she was a female in her palace, to ensure people don't revolt against her. People thought only a male ruler will be able to protect them as the king. Now Ghiyasuddin Balban. After Razia, three weak rulers in succession ascended the throne. Subsequently, Balban ascended the throne and abolished the 40 as it was hostile to him. Balban was governor of one of the provinces in the slave dynasty. So Balban ascended the throne and abolished the 40. Why? Because the 40 was not in his favor, they were hostile to him. He established spies to gather intelligence about the conspirators and troublemakers. Balban introduced spies to look upon who were the conspiring against him or who were creating trouble for him. He dealt with insubordination and defiance of royal authority sternly. He was very strict, very stern. What is an example? Tughril Khan, a provincial governor of Bengal, was beheaded for revolt. Tughril Khan, a provincial Bengal, was beheaded. Normally, people will behead only small, poor citizens. They don't do any strict action against the nobles. But Tughril Khan, a provincial governor, was beheaded. So this gave a signal to the 40 and others that insubordination will not be tolerated. Defiance of royal authority will be dealt with sternly. And also, there was an information gathering about conspirators and troublemakers by Balban. By these actions, Balban sent out a message that he is a strong ruler. He was ruthless in dealing with enemies also, not only internal enemies. So what he did, Meos of Mewar, though they were Muslim Rajputs, Rajputs are strong. Muslims are their own clans. But still, the Meos of Rajput were sternly dealt with by Ghiyasuddin Balban. So with enemies also, with conspirators also, he was very strong. By this, he was able to ensure that there is a strict administrative control on the country. What only he did? He prevented invasions by Mongols. How he prevented invasion by Mongol? He obtained an assurance from Huglu Khan. Assurance from Huglu Khan. Who was Huglu Khan to give the assurance? Huglu Khan was the viceroy in Iran of the Mongols. He was the grandson of Genghis Khan. Huglu Khan was a grandson of Genghis Khan. So he was closer to the ruling family because he was not just a governor or a viceroy, but he was a grandson. And he was not just a grandson, he was a viceroy of the Mongol territory in Iran. So what assurance he got? He got that they will not advance beyond Sutlej. So they will not come into the areas governed by the slave dynasty. So Delhi Sultanate had a protection that there will be no Mongol invasion. Delhi Sultanate was able to deal firmly with the enemies like Meos of Rabat who were fearful fighters, and then the conspirators and troublemakers are removed, and internally the governors were also put in their place. Balban not only did his administrative or military changes, on the soft side also he was a very nice person. He patronized the Persian poet Amir Khusro. Amir Khusro had written a lot of chronicles based on which we can learn the history of the medieval India, especially of the slave dynasty. He patronized Amir Khusro. He built defensive forts so that other than Mongol, nobody else can have any war. Defensive forts are first step to prevent a war because people will be afraid that they will not win if they offend you. He died in 1287. Balban died in 1287. In 1290, Malik Jalaluddin Khalji, the commander of the army, assumed the office. Who was this Malik Jalaluddin Khalji? You will find that during the rule of Qutbuddin Aibak, Bakitar Khalji was there. Now on the lines of Bakitar Khalji, you have a Malik Jalaluddin Khalji. In 1290, he assumed office as Naib, deputy to the Sultan on behalf of Balban's son Kaikabad. Balban's son was not very strong, he was weak. So 1287 to 1290, Malik Jalaluddin Khalji, the commander of the army, assumed office as Naib or representative or deputy to the Sultan. He ruled in the name of the Sultan, on behalf of the Sultan. But subsequently, Malik Jalaluddin Khalji murdered him and assumed the Sultanship. 1287 to 1290, Malik ruled as Naib for his son. For whose son? Balban's son, Kaikabad. And then he was murdered, and in 1290 Jalaluddin Khalji assumed the Sultanship. He ruled only for 4 years. Alauddin, the governor of Kara and a nephew of Jalaluddin, led the military expedition against the Deccan kingdom. Alauddin led the military expedition against the Deccan kingdom. Devagiri, Yadava king, Ramachandra, and returned with a huge wealth. Deccan kingdom, the kingdom of Devagiri, where King Ramachandra was ruling of the Yadava clan. King Ramachandra of the Yadava clan was ruling the Devagiriya kingdom in Deccan. This kingdom lost the war against Alauddin. Alauddin was the governor of Kara and he was also a nephew of Jalaluddin Khalji. And he brought back a lot of wealth. He plundered the kingdom and brought a lot of wealth. This wealth was used to build a new city. Later, Alauddin treacherously killed Jalaluddin after buying off prominent nobles and important commanders and declared himself a sultan in 1296. Right? After 4 years, he killed Jalaluddin. The money he brought, he used to buy off the nobles, to buy off the commanders, to buy off the people who may revolt. And after paying them a lot of money, he ensured that Jalaluddin was killed and he, Alauddin, became the sultan. And because these people had taken money, they have to be subordinate to Alauddin. He became the sultan. The money brought from this Yadava king Ramachandra's defeat was used for all this. Now, Alauddin Khalji ruled from 96 to 1316. What he did? He consolidated the Delhi Sultanate. He brought control to Punjab against the Mongols. And then he brought Rajasthan and Gujarat also. He consolidated the empire. He expanded Alauddin Khalji. So this is the Khalji dynasty. Till then it is Qutbuddin Aibak. So Qutbuddin Aibak's dynasty is the Iltutmish Balban dynasty. Till Balban it is the Balban dynasty. Now what happened is after Balban was ruling, after Balban died, his son was not strong. So Naib or Jalaluddin Khalji ruled, and Jalaluddin Khalji was killed, and his commander Alauddin, the nephew, took over. So it became Khalji dynasty. The political administrative reforms were impressive during Alauddin Khalji's time. He was an able ruler. His administrative reforms were impressive. He surveyed the agrarian resources. He fixed the standard revenue for demand. He entrusted tax collection, revenue collection to military officers. So military officers, A, they will strictly collect the tax. B, they will ensure they will have a standing army to support him if need be. So they were interested in military tax collecting job. And then to ensure they do not collect more than extra, standard revenue was fixed, and then tax agents were appointed to ensure only proper taxes were collected. The prices were fixed for the grains. Grain was collected as a tax and stored in the trade granaries. And he maintained garrison center, and for these garrison centers, these grains were used to take care of the needs of the soldiers. He also employed spies to report to him directly, who will check whether traders are making more money. So not only he had control over the old spies who were controlling the conspirators during the Iltutmish's time or Balban's time, but he had spies to ensure traders are also not creating inflation. He sent his lieutenant Malik Kafur to south up to Madurai in 1310. So it is during the Khalji's time that the Delhi Sultanate tried to expand to the south, and they reached up to Madurai in 1310. They fought against Yadavas of Devagiri. Earlier, we know that Alauddin Khalji actually brought a lot of money from Devagiri by winning against King Ramachandra. So they fought against Yadavas of Devagiri. They brought Kakatiyas of Warangal under their control, Hoysalas under their control, and Hoysala is somewhat near the today's Karnataka. Pandyas of Madurai also accepted Alauddin's suzerainty. Pandyas of Madurai also accepted Alauddin's suzerainty. That is the time when Islamic rule started on the Dravidian side. Till then, Islamic rule was not in the southern portion of India, it was only in the central portion of India. In 1303, in the context of defeat of the Rajput army in Chittor, this is one important thing that we learn from the inscriptions. Alauddin Khalji was able to fight against the Rajputs, and in 1303, one important thing happened, that is called Jauhar. What is Jauhar? Jauhar is the women will light a fire and kill themselves by jumping onto it. Now, they will also jump into the pyre of their husbands, brothers and fathers. Pyre is a burning of the funeral of the human body. How will these people die? The men will die. The men will willingly go into the war, knowing that they are a losing army, knowing that they are a losing kingdom, knowing that the opponents are strong and they will be killed. Men will willingly go and get themselves killed in the hands of the enemy. Once the men are killed, the women will light a fire and jump into them and burn themselves. In this way, all the men and women will kill themselves. This is a custom or a rite of Jauhar done when the Rajput clan knows that they will lose. That means what? They are a very ferocious and fighting and capable clan, but if they know they cannot survive, They will not allow themselves to be plundered by the enemy, but they will kill. That means what? Whoever had conquered that area will get only a ghost town without any people there. All the people will kill themselves. This is Jauhar. It happened in 1303 and it happened during the rule of Alauddin Khalji because he had sent Malik Kafur to conduct military campaigns and expand the Delhi Sultanate. Alauddin's successors failed to retain the power. So Jalaluddin Khalji and Alauddin Khalji were only the most popular Khaljis in the Khalji dynasty. Then comes the Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Now in 1316 Alauddin Khalji died, his successors were there for another 4 years. In 1320 Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq came. Who is Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq? Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq is known for having recovered the territories that the Sultanate had lost after the turmoil following the death of Alauddin Khalji. That means what? After Alauddin Khalji died in 1316, between 1316 to 1320, in that 4 years, whatever Devagiri, Warangal, Hoysalas, Pandyas, whoever were brought under the control of the Delhi Sultanate by Malik Kafur and Alauddin Khalji, declared their independence. The people who are far away from the power center, that is Delhi, declared their independence. They revolted against the Delhi Sultanate. So Tughlaq was responsible for bringing them back, recovering the lost territories. So who helped Tughlaq in this? His son Jauna Khan defeated Prataparudra of Warangal. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq's son Jauna Khan defeated Prataparudra of Warangal and he returned with a rich booty. Booty is what? Every time a king loses against the Islamic rule or Islamic king or Islamic general, they take away all the riches of that kingdom. They plunder the temples and the palaces where money or riches or pearls or diamonds or navaratans or gold is stored. So this is the plundering of the booty. Or rich booty was brought back. This was used to build Tughlaqabad. Now earlier, during Balban's time, or even before that, during Jalaluddin's time, the Yadava king Ramachandra brought huge wealth. It was used to buy off the nobles and then to kill Jalaluddin and for Alauddin to become king. During Tughlaq's time, money was brought from Prataparudra of Warangal and this was used to build Tughlaqabad. Tughlaqabad was a city that was built. Jauna Khan was said to have killed his father and ascended the throne. The same thing happened in Jalaluddin Khalji's head also. Alauddin brought the money and then he killed his father and became the king. Here, Jauna Khan brought the money, built a city, killed his father Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and became the Sultan in 1325. Only 4 years Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was allowed to run the show as a Sultan. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was also a governor of a province. After Alauddin's sons could not run the Sultanate, he assumed a need to control over, right? Then came Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Though Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a learned man, he was a person of cruelty. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a person of cruelty. 1325 onwards, he was ruling. Who is Muhammad bin Tughlaq? Jauna Khan took the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He changed his name when he ascended the throne. Ghiyasuddin's son, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He is a learned man, he is a capable man, but he is a cruel man also. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, his history we have to study more. When you are studying NCERT pattern or some other pattern, we will study a lot more about Muhammad bin Tughlaq because there will be a comparative study of Tughlaq and Alauddin Khalji. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Alauddin left the old ruling families as his dependents after he conquered and looted. So that means the kings were there but they were not having the kingdoms or the power. So there was a scope that they could revolt. Now to help the conquest and rule easily, Tughlaq shifted the capital to central India from Delhi. That is, Delhi is in the north. He shifted to Devagiri. Devagiri was changed into Dawlatabad. He shifted to Dawlatabad. How far is it? It is a 40 days march. And Tughlaq asked all the people, the blind, the paralytic, the ill, the children, the sick, he wanted everybody to march. When people were trying shelter or hiding themselves behind something, he used to ask his soldiers to catch them and behead them. So he was so cruel, he shifted the whole city, whole people from Delhi to Devagiri, Dawlatabad. Right? Later, he found that this was not right. The decision was wrong. Ruling from Devgiri or Daulatabad is not easy. Delhi is better. So he ordered them to go back. So Ibn Battuta, a Moroccan traveler, found Delhi empty, abandoned and home to small population. Delhi was becoming a ghost town. It was empty and abandoned. This is we come to know from the chronicles of Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta also says that these people were not capable of ruling. These people have a not a king's mindset but that of a slave mindset. So Ibn Battuta says these people are not capable. From Ibn Battuta's writings, we also know that these people were so worse that they appointed a barber, a gardener, a cook, and all as governors of various provinces. So this is why we say we learn history from the chronicles, from the biography and autobiographies written by various people, from the historical records kept by the travelers. Ibn Battuta, Moroccan traveler, is one of the rich repository of Indian historical information. Now, Delhi's ruin was so complete that neither cat or dog was left in the buildings in that city. The palaces and all got into ruins. And even the suburbs, a city of 10 miles had become a ghost town. That is what Ibn Battuta had written. Because of the order by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who was earlier known as Jana Khan, who is son of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, to ask the people to move to the new city. Now, Tughlaq had a lot of money lost because of this administrative changes. He also wanted to expand the empire and bring back the countries that was lost, because that was what the Tughlaq dynasty's aim was, to recover the territories that was lost because of the successors of Alauddin Khilji being weak. So he wanted more money to raise the army. For that, what he did, he increased the land revenue, and he said land revenue will not be collected as grains and stored in the state granary, but will be collected as money. So there were famines also during this time. 1325 to 1351 were a season of famines. 1330 onwards we had famines in Bengal and even in Indo-Gangetic plains. Now because of the famines, what happened? People were not having enough money to pay. Also, they were asked to pay money in gold and silver. The taxes were to be paid in gold and silver. So what happened? People did not have gold and silver to pay. And then he was using this gold and silver to pay salary to the soldiers who were garrisoned in Delhi. So the gold and silver was exhausted in the royal treasury. So what did he do? Muhammad bin Tughlaq introduced the copper coin. Copper coin is what? Cheap metal currency. So when he introduced a token currency or a cheap metal currency or a copper currency in place of golden coin, people wanted to exchange the gold copper currency for the gold and silver, but it was not possible. So people started counterfeiting the copper coin, because people were able to get copper easily and counterfeited. So again it became a problem for the treasury of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So what he did, he cancelled the copper currency and went back to gold and silver. Also, because Muhammad bin Tughlaq asked for payment of taxes in gold and silver, and because taxes were raised, the peasants said, okay, if I have a produce only, you will ask for tax, right? I will not cultivate in my land. I will not take up agriculture. I will not produce paddy and wheat. So what happened? The produce went down. So because the production went down, even though there was already a famine, this created further shortage or scarcity of food. So the people started suffering more. So the room for revolt, the mood for rebellion was peaking during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Now what happened? The people in Doab, which was annexed and brought into the Tughlaq's control, stopped producing or stopped cultivation. The governors of Awadh, Multan, Sindh and all revolted and declared themselves as independent from the slave dynasty. Daulatabad, which was Devagiri earlier, ruled by Yadava clan, the conquered territory, the new capital after Alauddin Khalji went back, that is after Muhammad bin Tughlaq went back, they declared themselves independent, and it became an independent sultanate called Brahmani. Who became the Brahmani ruler? He was again one of the feudal lords under the Tughlaq's rule. He was a governor of a small province after Devagiri was converted to Daulatabad. So Devagiri went out of control. Awadh, Multan and Sindh went out of control. Doab peasants said they will not cultivate. Trade suffered. Why? Because foreign merchants stopped business. Why? Because copper was withdrawn and gold and silver was not available, and state had become almost bankrupt. Bankrupt means what? Treasury did not have enough money to pay for its needs. And on the top of it, there were a lot of soldiers who were stationed in Delhi as a garrison town. The soldiers were not paid enough. They were paid in copper currency. The state did not have grains. When the soldiers went out to buy the grains in the market, the traders had increased the prices because of the scarcity. Now, if you notice in Alauddin Khalji's time, people were employed to spy the prices and report to him, so the prices of the goods did not go up during Alauddin Khalji's time. But during Tughlaq's time, that was not there, and so the soldiers were not able to buy, using their copper currency salary, the grains that they need for their living. So Delhi as a garrison town also was not really loyal to Tughlaq in those days. So these were the problems. Now, as we know, Malik Kafur came up to Madurai during Alauddin Khalji's time, and Pandyas had accepted the suzerainty. Means what? They said, we are under your control, you are our rulers. That is what is called suzerainty. Now, these Pandyas also said, we are now independent. They said, we are a separate sultanate. Bengal became a separate sultanate. What is special about Bengal? The Prabharuda of Warangal. After that, they went and annexed Bengal also. Bengal, Rajasthan, Gujarat and Punjab was taken, and later Bengal was also taken and brought under the rule of the Tughlaq. Right? So this Bengal went out of control. Awadh, Multan, Sindh went out of control. Daulatabad, Devagiri went out, and Madurai also proclaimed as a separate sultanate in 1334. Bengal became independent in 1336. So 1346. So though Tughlaq was ruling in Delhi or from Delhi till 51, in 1334, 1346 and all, certain regions started falling off or falling out of the Delhi Sultanate. Then came Firoz Shah. Firoz Shah ruled from 51 to 18. Firoz Shah is son of Ghiyasuddin's younger brother and succeeded Tughlaq. Firoz is son of Ghiyasuddin's younger brother. Now Jana Khan is son of Ghiyasuddin, Firoz is son of younger brother. He could neither suppress the revolt nor win back the provinces. He could neither suppress the revolt nor win back the provinces. These are the provinces who proclaimed independence, and these are the areas that had revolts. He could not do that. But what is good about him, he did not show interest in reconquering. He banned inhuman punishments because Muhammad bin Tughlaq said he is very strong ruler, and during Alauddin Khalji's time itself, people started to be very strong, and before that they started showing that beheading of the governor itself is not something new. So from this ruthless mindset of the rulers of the Delhi Sultanate, you have a Firoz who said inhuman punishments are banned. He also reversed the Tughlaq's taxes. What he did, he abolished the taxes which are not recognized by Muslim law. That means what? He went by the Sharia law. Whatever Quran says only he did. Whatever is not permissible by Quran, he did not implement in his kingdom. He adopted humanitarian measures. He rewarded Sufis and other religious leaders generously and listened to their advice. Sufis were a mix between the Hindus, the Turks, the Persians and the Muslims and all. So Sufi is a religion which had the good of all the religions, because India was a confluence of Islam and Hinduism from the Persian and Turkish rulers. So he rewarded the Sufis. He created charities. Charities for what? Aiding the poor Muslims. He built colleges for education. He built mosques because mosque was a place of belongingness, the coming together, the brotherhood, the togetherness of the people of a common faith. He brought all that because Juma prayer was the place where everybody felt we are all brothers and we are all son of the same God. Then he also built hospitals. He promoted agriculture by how? By abolishing certain taxes, by waiving off theft, and then by digging canals for irrigation. He helped the peasants to go back to agriculture. He laid out some thousands of gardens. Firoz was known for thousands of gardens. That is why today we have a Firoz Shah Kotla in Delhi. Firoz Shah laid out lots of gardens, and he restored old gardens of Alauddin Khalji also. Restored the forts or restored the old palaces, because when Tughlaq took away the people from Delhi to Daulatabad or Devagiri. Delhi came into ruins. So he brought back Delhi to its life. And his son Muhammad Khan revolted against him. Though he was so good and so nice and so liberal towards the public, his son revolted against him and captured power. Firoz Shah was overthrown by his son Muhammad Khan. Then came the story of Timur's invasion. Now, who is Timur? Timur or Tamerlane ruled in Samarkand. Where is Samarkand? Central Asia. It is in the northwest of India. He came and he plundered Delhi in 1398. These people, the Firoz Shah were ruling till 1388. After that, there was no powerful ruler. Though his son Muhammad Khan revolted and took over control, after 1388, there were no powerful ruler in Delhi Sultanate. The Timur, ruler of Samarkand of the Central Asia, which lies in northwest India, entered and plundered Delhi in December 1398, almost after 10 years. Right? Timur not only carried a huge wealth in the form of gold, silver, and jewels, but they also took artisans, carpenters, and masons to work on monuments of Samarkand. They were taking a lot of people also, the artisans from the Indian subcontinent after plundering Delhi in 1398 to go back and work in Samarkand. Where is Samarkand? It was in Central Asia, northwest part of India. Now Timur, when they took all this money and all these people, they left behind a representative called Kisr Khan. They left behind a representative called Kisr Khan. Now was Kisr Khan the governor of whole of Delhi Sultanate? No. The Timurs captured only Delhi, Meerut and Punjab. Timurs captured only Delhi, Meerut and Punjab. They plundered Delhi and Punjab. Punjab they could plunder because of what? Punjab, the land of 5 rivers, was a fertile area and there was a lot of money there. So they took away all that money. The Timurs take away all that money. And they left behind a governor called Kisr Khan. 1938, all this, the Timurid invasion happened. Now, though the Khalji Tughlaq Sultanate fragmented into a number of independent kingdoms, it endured for another 144 years. It means what? There was a Kisr Khan for the Delhi Meerut Punjab region from 1398. Before that, Firoz Shah was ruling from Delhi, but he did not reconquer the areas. So some areas were under the Tughlaq dynasty, but Madurai, Bengal, Daulatabad, Awadh, Multan, Sindh and all were independent. So all these things were independent, but Firoz Shah's kingdom, the Sultanate, survived till 1414. From 1388 to 1414 it survived. Later Kisr Khan, he founded the Said dynasty in 1414. Kisr Khan came in 1398. From 1398 to 1414, he remained as a governor or representative of the Timurs in India. In 1414, he founded the Said dynasty, but that lasted only till 1351, around 35 years only. Subsequently, Alauddin Alam Shah abdicated the throne in 1441. Abdicated means what? He said, I don't want to be the king or I don't want the kingdom. I am no more the ruler, and he left. That is what is abdication. So Kisr Khan founded the Said dynasty, but Alauddin Alam Shah abdicated the throne in 1441 after 35 years. So for 35 years, Kisr Khan and his family ruled. Before that, Kisr Khan ruled Central India. Central India is what? 3 areas, Delhi, Meerut and Punjab, as a representative of the Timur. So 1451 Said dynasty left or abdicated the throne. Now there was a person called Bahol Lodi. Bahol Lodi was a governor of Sirhind in Punjab. Now Bahol Lodi, a governor of a place in Punjab, declared himself the new Sultan because Punjab was at that time, a portion of it was brought under the control of the Timurs by taking it away from the Mongols, taking it away from the Delhi Sultans. So from that Punjab, Kisr Khan had Delhi, Punjab and Meerut under him, and it was handed over to the Sayyid dynasty and Alam Shah abdicated. So Bahul Lodi from Punjab took over as Sultan of Delhi. Bahul Lodi took over as Sultan of Delhi. Then came the Lodi dynasty. Lodi dynasty lasted from 51 to 26. Lodi dynasty lasted from 51 to 26 for about 75 years. So Bahul Lodi was the first king. Then came Sikandar Lodi. In 1489, Sikandar Lodi took over. 1451, Bahol Lodi was there. In 89, or after some 38-40 years, Sikandar Lodi took over the Lodi dynasty rule. He was a patron of arts. He founded the city of Agra. That is why we have the Sikandra fort. Agra, he took over. He founded the city of Agra and made it his capital. Instead of ruling from Delhi, they started ruling from Agra. Agra and Delhi were in those days, the actual distance between these two cities from the ruling perspective was around 20-30 kilometers. He died in 1517. Sikandar Lodi ruled from 89 to 17. For about 30 years he ruled. So, Bahol Lodi ruled for about 30-40 years. Sikandar Lodi ruled for about 30 years in the Lodi dynasty. Then Ibrahim Lodi, his son, succeeded Sikandar Lodi. So, Bahol's son Sikandar, Sikandar's son Ibrahim. But then Babur defeated Ibrahim. Babur thereafter established Mughal Empire in India. So after Babur, it is called Mughal Empire in India. Till then, it is called Lodi dynasty or Sayyid dynasty or Tughlaq dynasty or Alauddin Khalji and Jamaluddin Khalji's Khalji dynasty. Before that, it was Balban dynasty. So what happened is, first we have the introduction of slave dynasty because Muhammad Ghori appointed his slave Qutbuddin Aibak as a governor. Then Qutbuddin Aibak declared himself as a sultan, and then came his son Iltutmish, and Iltutmish's son was not capable, so Raziya Sultana daughter was appointed. Then after that she was overthrown, and then came Ghiyasuddin Balban. Then Ghiyasuddin Balban was ruling for some time. Then Ghiyasuddin Balban was overthrown by Jalaluddin Khalji. Ghiyasuddin Balban was overthrown by Jalaluddin Khalji. Jalaluddin Khalji was overthrown by Alauddin. Who was Alauddin? Jalaluddin Khalji was a Malik or Naib deputy to Balban's son because Balban was not capable. After being deputy, he became the Sultan. After being Sultan, he was killed by his own son Alauddin. Then you have Alauddin Khalji who was an able rule. So Alauddin Khalji's rule can be considered as an very able ruler, very able period in the Delhi Sultanate. Then came Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was overthrown by his son Jauna Khan. Jauna Khan took the name of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. This is also a very important period, but it is not a golden period. It was a period of very many worst decisions like stationing the army in Delhi itself, increasing the taxes, introduction of a copper currency, transfer of a capital to Dawlatabad and transfer back. All these were so many things which created people to declare themselves independent or to revolt or to cause rebellions or to compound the impact of the famine. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq's period. Then came Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was Ghiyasuddin's younger brother's son. Who is Ghiyasuddin, the founder of the Tughlaq dynasty, Muhammad bin Tughlaq's father. Okay, then came the Timur invasion. The Timur invaded only almost after 10 years of the Firoz Shah's loss. Firoz Shah died, and after his son or successors did not rule the kingdom well. Timur came and took over Delhi, Meerut and Punjab. They overran these kingdoms. They conquered these kingdoms. They took away the money, they took away the carpenters and masons, but they left behind Qasir Khan as a governor. Qasir Khan from 1398 to 1414 ruled, and then 1414 he started a Sayyid dynasty. Then after him, his son Alauddin Alam Shah and others were ruling, but Alam Shah abdicated the throne in 1451. And then Bahol Lodi of the Punjab province declared himself as a sultan. Then came the Lodi dynasty. Who ruled? Sikandar Lodi was a patronator of arts. He ruled by creating a city called Agra. His son Ibrahim Lodi ruled for some time from 1517 to 1526. In 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi and set up the Mughal Empire. So this is called the Battle of Panipat. This Battle of Panipat is a very famous incident in Indian history because that is the battle in which the slave dynasty lost the rule and Babur established the Mughal dynasty. Now, during the slave dynasty, the very popular thing that happened is the Indo-Saracenic architecture. Indo-Saracenic architecture. What does it mean? Mansions of high-ranking Muslim nobles, soldiers, officials were built first, and around that, this other people's houses were built and mosques were built. The mosques were built in the imperial style, and then because of the Turkish and the Persian ruler influence, because of the Islamic rule influence, they had graceful decorations, doorways, walls, and lines from Quran were written, and it gave a distinct appearance. The shape of the building was Persian while the decoration was Indian. What are some of these buildings? Qutub Minar, we know Qutbuddin Aibak started, but it was finished by Iltutmish. Alai Darwaza, Kawat al-Islam. Kawat al-Islam is the most famous masjid, the first Muslim mosque in Delhi or India. The Moti Ki Masjid, then the tombs of Iltutmish and Balban, forts of Dawlatabad. Dawlatabad is old Devagiri, built by Tughlaq as a capital. Firozabad, built by Firoz Shah Kotla. All these are evidence of Indo-Saracenic architecture. This is one important change that happened in the medieval India. Where did they rule? The Lahore, Meerut, Delhi, Punjab area is the center of the slave dynasty's rule. They did come up to Dawlatabad, they did come south also, but their rule was not regularly there for the southern regions, they were concentrated only in these regions. And even though these were the regions which were still outside the control of the Delhi Sultanate or the slave dynasty. Thereafter, Babur, in the Battle of Panipat in 1526, did win against the Delhi Sultanate and established the Mughal Empire. Thereafter, it is called the Mughal Empire or the Mughal rule. This is a part of the Delhi Sultanate that we study in history for this class. The rest we will study in other classes. Please keep coming back for videos on other subjects on science and social science. We will look into the kingdoms in North and South India and medieval India.